Chapter 5 Ass's Ears. The gods of the Greeks were, in many ways, not very godlike. Of course, they were brave and beautiful as only gods can be, and they had powers that only gods have, but they also had their faults that mortals have. There were even times they were more like bad-tempered children than grown-up men and women. Of all the gods, Apollo was one of the most godlike, yet even he sometimes had fits of bad temper, as will be seen. There was a woodland god named Pan, a god of herds. He was a strange creature, half man, half goat, with little horns growing out of his head. With the other woodland gods and nymphs, lovely beings who were almost goddesses, Pan lived a carefree life in the high hills. He spent his mornings, afternoons, and evenings among his sheep and goats, playing his pipes. Now, Pan was famous for his pipes. He had made them out of handfuls of reeds from the river. When he blew across the reeds, he filled the woods with music. With his gay pipings, Pan was the center of the sports and games of the woodland gods and nymphs. There was a mortal living in Pan's woodlands too. He was a king named Midas. This was the same Midas who had wished for the golden touch. It was a foolish wish, as the god who granted it knew, and the poor king almost starved to death because of it. Everything he touched, even every crumb of bread and every drop of water, turned to pure gold. When the golden touch had finally taken away, the king had enough of riches. He left his palace and went to live a simple life in the woods and fields. There he heard Pan's wood piping, and said it was the most beautiful music in all the world. So Pan began to think of his music might be as good as that of Apollo, the god of music, or even better. In his pride, he dared Apollo to meet him in a contest. "If my music is better than yours," he said, "then I will be the god of music." "So be it," said Apollo, but he was annoyed with this upstart goat god. "Shall I arrange the contest and find a judge?" asked Pan. "So be it," said Apollo. He would let Pan have every advantage and would still put him in his place. Pan arranged the contest as he wished. It would be on the mountainside where he lived, with all his woodland friends looking on. King Midas would be there too, and the judge would be old Timolus, the god of mountain. On the high hillside, the goat god, Pan, with his reed pipes, met Apollo with his lyre. Between them sat old Timolus. He looked like the mountain he was god of. With his stately head, with its ice-blue hair, there was a crown of oak trees. His great brown feet were planted firmly before him, and immovable as the mountain itself. At the feet of these three sat the woodland gods and nymphs. But Midas took a seat in the highest place, beside Timolus, like a judge himself. Foolish Midas! He might have been cured of his golden touch, but not even a god could cure him of his foolishness. Pan put his pipes to his lips and began to play. He played as he had never played before, like a million birds, like sunlight on the river, like waterfalls and wind in the trees. All of his love for his woodlands was in the music he played. It filled the hearts of the nymphs and gods with a wonderful, wild joy. Apollo, too, knew that here was music worth the hearing. But then Apollo touched the strings of his lyre, and the woodland seemed to melt away. The listeners felt themselves lifted to the high heavens, where Apollo drove his shining chariot. From there they saw the earth below them, with its green lands and wide blue seas, looking small and beautiful. They saw the heavens around the earth, with the shining stars and the sun and the moon. As they watched, it seemed that time ran faster. They saw dark spread over the earth as night came, then day and night, and day again, and winter, spring, and summer again. And then they knew that this was the way Apollo saw the earth, a small blue ball from the gods to cherish. When Apollo stopped, all the listeners knew that this was the god of music who played, and they bowed their heads in honor to him, all but Midas. Foolish Midas said he liked the pipes of Pan much better, and all he heard from the lyre, he said, was a silly plinking. Then Apollo forgave Pan for his daring. He turned all his bad temper on Midas. "Donkey!" he cried. "Jackass! May the ears you hear with look like what they are." And he was gone. Then all those left on the hillside began to laugh. They held their sides and rolled on the grass with laughter. They laughed until tears ran down their face. All but Midas. He didn't even see the joke. He only felt his ears itching and twitching. He put his hands up to scratch them, and he found that they were long and hairy, just like the ears of a jackass that the god had called him. So Midas fled, never to come there again. Home he fled, and hid himself. He said he was sick, and he was. He hid for as long as he could, but even a sick king must eat. When Midas finally showed himself, he was wearing a bright silk scarf around his head to hide his ears. But not even a king can stop his hair from growing, and no barber can cut the hair of a man who is wearing a hat. So King Midas' barber learned the terrible secret, but he learned it on pain of death if he ever told it. The secret drove the poor barber almost crazy. How he longed to tell it. What good is a secret that can't be told? How he ached to tell it, yet he feared for his life if he did. The poor man lived in terror that he might blurt it out or talk in his sleep. If only he could tell the secret just once, he thought, he could find peace. Finally, the barber went, in the dark of night, far out into the meadow by the river. There he dug a deep hole. Then he climbed into the hole, and there he whispered his terrible secret. After that, he filled the hole and went home. At last, he could sleep soundly. In time, reeds grew in the soft earth over the hole. When the wind blew across the reeds, they whispered among themselves the secret that the barber told. King Midas has ass's ears, they said. King Midas has ass's ears. A man passing the bed of reeds heard the whispering. At first he couldn't believe his own ears. Then he remembered the scarf that the king always wore, and he knew what he heard was true. How he laughed! His king had the ears of a donkey. With glee he ran to spread the news. Soon everyone was laughing at the king and the secret of his foolish ass's ears, the secret that the reeds had whispered. And they still whisper it, even to this day. Whenever the wind blows over the reeds by a river, you can hear them whispering about foolish King Midas, who stirred the anger of Apollo. King Midas has ass's ears. Midas has ass's ears. Ass's ears. King Midas has.